Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. Hopefully your DFS Sunday has been profitable up to this point, but if not, never fear, the Sunday Night Football Showdown contest is here. Tonight's game features an NFC WEST battle with playoff implications as the 10-2 Seattle Seahawks visit the 7-5 Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have been installed as a half point to a 1 point favorite with a game total of 47 points. Before we unpack tonight's game, I want to share the numbers that are fantasy relevant to the Showdown contest itself. Up to and including the Thursday night showdown between the Cowboys and Bears, there have been 96 Showdown contests during the 2019 season. These showdowns have an average winning score of 131.99, an average winning captain score of 42.22. Since the captain score represents 32% of the average winning score, I focus a lot of attention to the captain's position. With that being said, the captain's position breaks down as follows. The underdog running back has been the captain for the winning lineup more than any other position, 20 times for 21%. The favorite quarterback, 17 times for 18%. The favored wide receiver has been the captain in the winning lineup 16 times for 17%. The underdog wide receiver, 12 times for 13%. The favored running back has been the captain in the winning lineup 12 times for 13%. Underdog quarterback has been the captain in the winning lineup 7 times for 7%. The favorite defensive special team has been the captain in the winning lineup 6 times for 6%. The underdog kicker, 2 times for 2%. The favored tight end has been the captain in the winning lineup 2 times for 2%. The underdog tight end has been the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 1%. And the underdog defensive special teams has been the captain in the winning lineup 1 time for 1%. Now, I've also combined these by position. Running backs combined, underdog and favorite, have appeared in the captain spot for the winning lineup 32 times, which is 33%, 1/3. Wide receivers are pretty close behind, 28 times for 29%. Quarterbacks, 24 times for 25%. All others, 12 times for 13%. Now, the overall straight-up record of the winning captain is pretty telling as well. The overall straight-up record of the winning captain is 67-29, which is a winning percentage of 70%. That just tells you that the captain is coming from the winning lineup 70% of the time, the winning team. And that I broke that down as well. Running backs are 24 wins and 8 losses in the captain's position. Wide receivers, 16 wins and 12 losses. And quarterbacks, 17 wins and 7 losses. And that breaks down running backs, 75% winning percentage, wide receivers, 57% winning percentage, and quarterbacks, a 71% winning percentage. Do these numbers unlock the mystery of the showdown lineup for tonight's Seahawks-Rams game? Absolutely not. But there are some takeaways and some things that can give us an edge. And some of those main takeaways are the underdog running backs in the captain's position appear in the captain's spot more than any other position, 21% of the time. Running backs combined appear in the captain's spot a third of the time, 33%. And the captain for the winning lineup comes from the winning team 70% of the time. And I use those main takeaways as a part of my process. My process involves, first, I take a stand. Who do I think is going to win the game? How are they going to win the game? What are the matchups? And who are the players that support that matchup? What is the game theory? How do I think the game will go? And then I identify a few of those players that I feel have a path to be the higher scoring. And I have a couple things that I go by. If I have a wide receiver in the captain spot, I want his quarterback in the flex spot. What that's telling me is I think that quarterback or that wide receiver is actually going to outscore that quarterback, and that quarterback's primarily going to be going to that wide receiver. If I have a quarterback in the captain spot, that's saying he's going to have a big game, but I think he's going to spread the ball around. And when I have a quarterback in the captain spot, I always want at least 2 of his targets in my flex spots. And then I build my lineup around that. I correlate the rest of it. Obviously, you have to have a player, at least one player from the other team, and I correlate the whole lineup. What makes sense? What's the game theory? and I build my lineups that way. Now, I've never won one of these showdown contests as far as a large GPP. I've cashed in a lot, probably 90%. I believe in my process, and I know one day I will take one of these down. I really believe in my process. In tonight's game, Seattle obviously wants to run the ball. They run the ball more than any other team, but now they have the two-headed backfield with Carson and Penny, so it's kind of difficult to pin one down. Penny does get receive more passes than Carson. Carson had a good game in the last game versus Minnesota, but you have to pick one or the. I'm probably not going to use both running backs in a lineup. I mean, it would be contrarian if you did that, but I prefer Penny in this game just because he does catch a lot of passes out of the backfield, and I think this game is going to have some scoring. The game total's 47 points. The Rams have their DVPs break down as follows. They have a DVP of 13 versus the quarterback position, 13 versus the wide receiver, and number 12 versus the running back. So their defense is decent. Obviously, their weakness would be the passing game. So they're a little bit more stingy versus the running game. So I'm kind of tempering my expectations for Carson tonight. If it's going to be a close game with a lot of scoring, I think this favors the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. Now, the Seahawks, their DVPs are as follows. They have a number 22 DVP versus the quarterback, number 17 DVP versus wide receiver, and a number 13 DVP versus the running back position. So they're kind of stingy versus running back as well. And these two teams have already matched up once this year back in week 5. In that game, wide receiver Kupp had 117 yards on 9 catches and a touchdown. And I also want to mention, forgot to mention that on DVP, is another one of the Seahawks' weaknesses is the tight end position. And Higbee's coming off a big game from last week. Everett's not playing again this week, so he could be getting some targets and a lot of use as well. Seattle funnels receptions to the tight end position. The Seahawks won that last game 30-29. And in this game, I think it's going to set up similar to the last game. And some stats from that game, Goff had 395 yards passing and 1 touchdown. Wilson had 268 yards passing and 4 touchdowns. And that's classic Russell Wilson, very efficient. Like I said, 4 touchdowns in that game on 268 yards, had over 100 yards less than Goff, and they won the game 30-29. In that game, also, Chris Carson did rush for 118 yards on 27 carries, and he had 1 receiving TD. But I'm going to limit or temper my expectations on that because of their use of Penny. I don't think he'll have a similar game like that. The Rams are playing at home, and I generally don't like running backs on the road. And when I have a close score with a high total, I tend to lean towards the passing games. Also in that game, Todd Gurley had 51 yards on 15 carries and 2 touchdowns. I look for the Seahawks to get Penny involved in this game with passes out of the backfield, but I also look for Gurley to be more involved for the Rams out of the backfield as well. I'm leaning towards, as I said, a closer, high-scoring game with the Rams getting a win so that they can stay in the playoff picture. Now, with all that being said, this is the lineup that I'm working on, and I'll break it down and tell you why as I build it. I'm going to go ahead with Gurley in the captain's spot. I think he'll be lower owned than Russell Wilson and Cooper Kupp, and so on ownership, I'm trying to differentiate myself with that. I think he'll get some passes out of the backfield. When they do get down close, they do like to give him the ball, and they need to get him going. So I think they'll do that. They're home, and a small, very small favorite, practically a pick. But I think Gurley will have a role in this game. But I think it's going to be primarily through the passing game. I like Goff. Obviously, if I like a game that's going to tend away from the running game, I'm going to go with the quarterbacks. I like Cup. He had a phenomenal matchup in Week 5, or a phenomenal game against them in Week 5. And I like Cooper Kupp a lot. He gets a lot of targets. Last week it was Robert Woods who had, let's look at that number real quick. I know it was just an outrageous amount of targets. Let's see here. Yeah, he had 18 targets, 172 yards on 13 receptions. And I mean, that was a huge game, 33.2 fantasy points. You'd think with all that he would have fell in the end zone, but he didn't. If he would have been the highest scoring player for the week. But I'm going to go back to Kupp this week. He done it against them earlier this year, and I think that golf will go to him a lot. I'm also going to use Metcalf for the Seahawks. I like Penny. And that leaves me 3,900. And I always like Greg the Leg Zuerlein. This guy has a tremendous leg. Generally, I go with the kicker that is home, or the kicker that's favored, or the kicker on the team. If they're favored, they're going to have a higher implied total, so I tend to lean towards that kicker. Both kickers are viable in this game. I really like Zuerlein. He can hit some 50 yarders or more. And another rule that I use is the team that I have more players on, if I'm going to use a kicker, I like to use the kicker for that team. So there's my lineup that I'm going to have. And again, I want to stress this, this isn't to give you a lineup or picks for you to go out and put in your contest. If you do, and you see the Cowboy Fan 215 up here, you put it in a contest, big contest or something, you see my name, we're going to split. And I'd rather have something than nothing. But what I'm trying to do is show you my process, how I use the numbers, the research, and how I put it together, how I correlate it. I feel like I have a lot of the scoring covered right here. It's risky not having Russell Wilson, but I have some pieces of Russell Wilson in Metcalf and Penny. I think Penny will get involved out of the backfield catching some passes. The Rams' pass defense is still pretty stingy. They did give up 4 touchdowns last time to Wilson, but I think it'll be a little bit different this time in L.A. Only 300 left on the table. The average winning lineup this year is leaving just over $1,000 on the table, so this might not be that contrarian, but I like it, and I feel like I have a lot of the scoring that's going to be done in this game covered. So as I always do, I use an optimizer, whether I'm building lineups for a main slate, Showdown. I use an optimizer. Now I don't MME, meaning I don't put in 150 lineups in a contest. If I could, I would. I don't have anything against guys that do that. It makes total sense. If I'm ever in the position to do it, I'll do it, because there's been times where I've had the optimized lineups and actually had the winning lineup in the optimizer. It just depends on your player pool. But for the Showdown slate, I use the optimizer, and what I do is I set it for 150 lineups, and I set up some minimum and maximum exposures. I'll pick out 5 or 6 captains. Tonight I believe I had 6, and a couple from both teams, captains, and I set the exposures to that, usually close to the same, so I have a good mix of them. And then I set my minimum maximum exposures on my flex players as well. I put a couple rules in there, not many, because the Showdown can be there can be so much variance in it. I don't want to affect it too much. I want the optimizer just to spit out the players that I'm using, and I want to see the different randomizations of the players that I like. There's no way I'm going to see all those trying to build manually, and I just want to see them. I go through them, look at them. Some of them I'll look at them and I'll change something. That's burned me a few times, but I'll set up a couple rules, like I already mentioned, if the quarterback is in the captain, I want 2 targets with him. If the wide receiver is in the captain, I like to have his quarterback with him. and I just I let it go. And what I've done in the past with you guys is I let you see the first lineup that it spit out, and that's what I'm going to do tonight for you. It had Jared Goff in the captain spot, Tyler Higbee. Higbee's really priced up, but after that big game last week, you can see why. And the Rams are they give up a lot of fantasy points to the tight end position. Or Seattle does. I'm sorry. I'm going to put Cooper Kupp in there. It had Reynolds. Reynolds is really interesting too. He's a number 4 receiver, but he's been on the field a lot and been getting targeted. He's been getting like wide receiver 3 type action. He actually had, and we can just look. Last week he had 4 targets. The week before he had 2. Before that he had 6 and 5, and he scored 7.9, 2.8, 8.0, 7.9. So I wouldn't count Reynolds as a punt. I think he'll get some targets in this game. Very speedy receiver. They can take it to the house. Just like last week in the Seattle-Minnesota game, David Moore pretty much busted the slate with that long bomb from Russell Wilson. And I think Reynolds is the same type of player. It's another target to go with Goff in the captain spot. I had my optimizer set up for at least 2 targets. It's given me 3. It also had Russell Wilson, and it had Penny. Now, oftentimes the optimizer will do this too. You use all the salary. This probably isn't too contrarian. You use all the salary, but there's nothing to say you can't win by using all of it. It makes sense. Goff in the captain got 3 targets. Russell Wilson, I do like Russell Wilson more in the flex spot because they do want to run the ball, and if the Rams are getting pressure on him, I could see, and they get out ahead, I can see Carson getting phased out, them using Penny. He likes to drop it off to Penny, also likes to drop it off to Hollister, but I'll use Penny in this spot because he does get some carries as well, and a few times has vultured some touchdowns away from Carson. But this was the optimizer lineup. I just wanted to show you guys after breaking down the captain spot and all that. So this is going to wrap up the Sunday Night Football video. I wanted to get this done and get it posted so you guys have it a few hours ahead of the game time. I want to thank you guys for joining me. I encourage you to please drop any opinions or comments that you may have below. I try to answer them all. Hope you guys had a really good DFS day today. Please share this video, like, subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that notification bell so you get notified when my next video posts. It really helps me out a lot when you do that. My subscriptions have been trending upwards, which is a good thing. My viewers have been way up there, so if you're a viewer and you've seen a few, give me a shot and hit that subscribe button. Like I said, it helps me out a ton. I'll be back tomorrow to post the Monday Night Football showdown video between the Giants and the Eagles. Should be a good one. Eli Manning coming back and probably his farewell tour. But I'll put that video out tomorrow as well. You can also follow me on Twitter at winningabout. Don't forget to check the injury report tonight at 7 o'clock. You only got 6 positions here. In Showdown, you definitely don't want a 0. You don't want a 0 in any contest, but you don't want to start out with a 0 due to an injury. And good luck to you guys. Hope this information is valuable to you. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports, and I'll see you tomorrow.